Hey guys, welcome to another Cult Movie Tuesdays right here on Night Owl Video, and today I am talking about the 1983 film Twilight Zone the movie. I hope you'll stick around and hear my thoughts on this, and I'm going to give you a bit of a synopsis, cast, reception, all that kind of stuff. I will say I've done for both movies this week. They're both anthology movies, and I found it a bit difficult to kind of, without making these videos like 45 minutes long, like to talk about the synopsis. So I'm going to give you kind of like a very brief description of the different stories that are in this anthology, and then I'll kind of give you my thoughts on them and that kind of thing, because otherwise I started to write out the synopsis for the first story and it was like a whole great big paragraph. So we'll try to keep this to a reasonable length. But anyway, this movie, let me tell you kids, if you've never seen this movie, or if you've never heard of this, about this movie, I should say, I'm guessing probably most of you have heard about the TV show The Twilight Zone. But this movie is infamous for not good, obviously, for not good reasons. So we'll get into that in a few minutes. But let's start off the top. This is a 1983 science fiction horror anthology produced by Steven Spielberg and John Landis, two of the biggest directors of that time, and of all time for that matter. I mean, these guys were making big movies, and yeah, I got more thoughts on that in a minute. But anyway, it has 4 segments in it. Each segment was directed by a different director. So along with Spielberg and Landis, we also have Joe Dante and George Miller. This is based on Rod Serling's Twilight Zone series, which ran from 1959 to 1964. This movie, I guess, they wanted to do this for a long time, but it took a long time for it to actually come to fruition. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like they even asked Rod Serling to do a Twilight Zone movie. I could be wrong on that, but I heard that. But anyway, so this movie has a prologue and an epilogue. So a little short thing at the beginning and a little short thing at the end. And then there's, like I said, there's 4 segments. The cast for this film is pretty huge. We've got Dan Aykroyd, Albert Brooks, Scatman Crothers from The Shining, John Lithgow, Vic Morrow, and Kathleen Quinlan. Burgess Meredith, who was from the original Batman series in the 60s, he sits in as Rod Serling's narration part for the film. So, because I think Rod Serling might have passed away by the time he must have passed away by the time this movie was made. So they got Burgess Meredith to sit in and do his part, like the narration. So the prologue, so bear in mind, I actually think I've never seen this film up until this week. If I did, it was a really long time ago and I've totally forgotten about it. But for some reason, I feel like I didn't see this. I definitely didn't see it in the theater, and I don't know. I don't think I rented it on video. So this was a first watch, so it was kind of fun. The prologue was one of my favorite parts, actually. It's only about 5 minutes long, but that was Dan Aykroyd and Albert Brooks, and they're driving along a country road at night, and they're talking about, they're singing the songs on the radio, and then the radio dies. So they start doing this thing where they are humming theme songs from famous TV shows of the past. And the last one they do is the Twilight Zone. And then they're talking about, how amazing the Twilight Zone was. And then Dan Aykroyd says, you pull over the car. I'll show you something really scary. And so he pulls the car over, and I won't spoil what happens, but suffice to say, some people consider it one of the scariest moments in horror films. I don't think it's that scary, but I definitely thought it was pretty entertaining, and it's got that real early 80s special effects makeup, if you think of Evil Dead or American Werewolf in London, it would fit in right in there. It's got, it's pretty spooky. And then it cuts to your first story. So your first story is actually based on an old Twilight Zone episode called Equality of Mercy. This one was directed by John Landis. This is where I started to write the synopsis and got kind of like, it got too much. So I will read what I wrote though, because I think it wraps it up pretty good anyway. But this story revolves around a very racist, bigoted man played by Vic Morrow, who was passed over for a promotion at work to a Jewish man. And he goes to a bar at night with his buddies, and he is like furious. He can't believe that he didn't get this job and that they gave it to a Jewish man. And then he goes off on this tirade about black people and Asian people, and he's just a real nasty guy. And I mean, I don't think this would play so well nowadays. Of course, this was 1983, so it was a different time. But I don't know. It's pretty insensitive, and again, if you're sensitive to that kind of stuff, you probably want to avoid that first story. I mean, even though that said, it is a good little story. But anyway, so this Vic Morrow's character, he gets passed over for promotion at work. He goes off on a tirade. Some of the other patrons, including some black gentlemen, sort of stand up to him and say, like, you know what, if you're gonna be like that, maybe you should leave. So he finally has had enough, I guess. Then he leaves, and when he opens the door to the bar to step out onto the street, he finds himself in Nazi Germany, and suddenly he finds himself being chased by Nazi soldiers, and they are interrogating him, taking his wallet, and then they throw it away. He's chased through the streets, he's chased through the streets. He has to fight off some of these Nazi soldiers. He eventually breaks into an apartment. It's a Jewish family, and he's like, "Oh, first off, he gets shot. Then he goes into this apartment. He's like, "Oh, you gotta help me," and they're blowing the whistle for the Nazis to come get him, because like, we don't want this guy in here. And he ends up on the ledge outside the window of the apartment building, falls to his death, seemingly, and then he wakes up and he's in like, KKK territory, and they're persecuting him for being a black man. And he's like, "I'm not a black man. Clearly you can see I'm a white man. And what are you doing? This is crazy." And then, so they hang him. And then he wakes up in like Vietnam, and he's being chased by American soldiers. And so it's kind of like this, like, payback for all the crap that he said and all this stuff. And then he gets, killed by the American soldiers. And so this review, I don't want to make it too long, but this, in this particular segment, there was to be a segment at the end where Vic Morrow's character saves some Vietnamese kids. Okay? Just stick with me. So, and it was going to be this kind of redemption of his character. And he was going to save these Vietnamese kids from the American soldiers and yada, yada, yada. But during the filming of that scene, Vic Morrow and two young, I think they're Vietnamese children, they end up, in real life, they ended up getting in a horrific accident involving a helicopter. And Vic Morrow and one of the children were decapitated, and the other child was crushed to death. And it was a really, really horrible situation. Probably one of the worst things that ever happened in film history, I would guess. So that ending obviously it did not happen in this segment. So in the end, he just gets shot, and it kind of leaves you kind of feeling like, okay, kind of cold. It's a cold ending, but it was a cold reality with the filming of that segment. And of course, rest in peace to those actors. I won't get too much into the controversy of it, but the two children were on set. They were not. They did not have permits to be filming those children at night, especially apparently back then, and especially now. You have to have permits, especially when it involves children and it's at night. So John Landis and Steven Spielberg and all the a lot of the people involved with the film were taken to court, and they were charged with I think it was like involuntary manslaughter or something like that. I think the case went on for like 5 months, and they were acquitted. And I again, allegedly, because I don't know, but I think they settled out of court with the families. So it was a really sad thing, and it kind of it left this movie kind of in darkness a bit. Apparently Steven Spielberg was just shattered by the whole experience, and he was very mad with John Landis. And as I understand, after that they were no longer friends or co-workers, peers in the film community. So I don't know if they've ever smoothed that over, but Steven Spielberg was really, really destroyed by that experience. And so that's the first segment. Okay, so that's kind of heavy. The second segment is directed by Steven Spielberg. It's called Kick the Can. It's a remake of an original Twilight Zone episode, I think episode 80. This one I did not care for, and most of the critics did not care for. It's Scatman Crothers, and he goes to a nursing home, and he gets talking to the residents at the seniors home, and he's becoming a resident there. And he's talking to these people, and he's trying to, I guess, get them to play again, to be kids again. And so at night they go out into the courtyard of the nursing home, and they start kicking the can, which was an old game, I guess, kids played back a long time ago. And the old people turn into children, and they dance around, and Scatman Crothers he stays old, but he watches them all play, and he's loving it. It's such a precious moment for him, and he's really loving the energy in that. But there's one guy in the nursing home, and he's a real curmudgeon. Like he's just like, don't get these people, thinking crazy thoughts, and we're old and we need our rest and all this stuff. And so he sees his fellow residents become children, and then he suddenly has this change of heart. And at the end of the story, Scatman Crothers is leaving the nursing home to go to a nursing home to presumably get those people to kind of refine themselves and find their playfulness. And when he leaves, he sees the old curmudgeon playing in the front yard with a can, kicking the can. Not a great story. I know Twilight Zone wasn't always scary. Sometimes it was like supernatural or just like kind of strange, but I didn't care for this one, and the critics didn't care for it either. This third segment, which I'm really not going to talk a lot about, was directed by Joe Dante. It's another remake of an original Twilight Zone episode, I believe episode 86. It's called It's a Good Life. This is a story about a woman who is going to another town to take on a new job, and she runs into this little boy, literally hits him with her car and bends the frame of his bike tire. And so he says, oh, come back to my home, and could you take me home, basically, with my broken bike? So she agrees. When she gets into the house, the family's real weird. Like, they're all up in her face, and they're like overly friendly. It's got a weird color palette. There's cartoons playing on the TV. It's very strange. And we discover that the little kid has kind of like a control over the family, so he can make people like zap into TVs, and he can make monsters appear out of top hats like magicians. And I didn't care for this one either. I don't know what they were going for. There is a giant puppet, like a rubber rabbit kind of monster that was kind of cool, but it couldn't save this story for me. It just really didn't go anywhere, and I just didn't really care for it. Now, the fourth segment was directed by George Miller, of course, of the Mad Max fame, and he did a remake of actually one of my favorite Twilight Zone episodes, which is Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. I don't remember what number episode that is in the original series, but it's basically a note-for-note remake of that Twilight Zone episode, if you've seen it. It stars John Lithgow in the role as the man who sees the the thing out the airplane window. I won't spoil it for you if you haven't seen it, but highly recommend that. John Lithgow was just in a wild fever. He was just, his acting was great in that. And he's just, you really buy that he's terrified in this episode. So yeah, I would highly recommend that one. I thought the first and the fourth segment were really good. Middle two, not so good. So there's really not a lot of notes about the production of this film, oddly enough, aside from the accident that took place, which I've already kind of touched on. So we'll just move on to the reception. The film got very mixed reviews from critics at the time. Many said that it kind of missed the mark considering all the talent that was behind it. And I have to agree with them there. I was just like, with Spielberg and Landis and Miller and Dante, how did this not... Now, I know the accident plagued the filming and that, and just plagued the general vibes, I think, around the film and the reception. But like I said, the first and the fourth segment were very good. Were very good. The middle two, not so good. But like I'm just sitting, especially the second one, which was directed by Steven Spielberg, the Kick the Can episode, really subpar. Like you would probably expect this to be like a TV, like a third, like amazing. It could have been an episode of Amazing Stories, really, and maybe I don't know if they ended up doing that or not, but really not good. So, it had the budget was $10 million. It brought in $42 million at the box office. Warner Brothers considered that a bit of a disappointment. They thought it was going to be bigger. Again, I don't know if that's because it was all over the news with the accident and maybe it sort of, I don't know, people didn't want to see it maybe or what, I don't know. But it did generate enough interest and it made enough money that Warner went ahead and made a sort of a redo of Twilight Zone for the 80s. I think I remember watching some of those episodes, but nothing really sticks out. So, if you have a subscription to Shudder, there's a really great series called Cursed Films. Or if you have cable TV, it's usually on, I think, the AMC network in the fall. It's called Cursed Films. It's hosted by Eli Roth, and they talk about movies that have like a cursed past, like Rosemary's Baby or Poltergeist. And there is actually an episode of the show which highlights the Twilight Zone, the movie. And if you have access to that, I would highly recommend that. It's probably more of an in-depth look at what happened there. I've just given you kind of the Cole's notes of it, but would highly recommend that anyway. So yeah, again, my feelings on the film, very mediocre, considering the talent behind it. I just picked this up at the public library for $1 whole. It's one that I don't see out and about in fact, I've never seen it out and about. So I snatched it up immediately because I have heard so much about it but never seen it. So you can rent this on Google Play, Amazon Prime, and YouTube. I don't think it's available for streaming on any of the services. This edition is from 2007 from Warner Brothers. It has a runtime of 101 minutes, aces. It's rated 14 in Canada. This is a Region 1 DVD. It has Dolby Digital sound. Special features, new digital transfer with soundtrack, remastered in Dolby Digital 5.1, theatrical trailer. It's a very basic edition. I don't know if this has gotten reissued by any of the boutique labels, but I'm guessing probably it will eventually. I'll show you the back. You can see there's a Scatman and there's John Lithgow. Yeah, it's Vic Morrow's there and the little boy, who I forget his name. But yeah, I would probably give this like a 3.75 out of 5. Not amazing, not bad, just kind of in the middle. Again, with the talent behind it, it was a bit shocking, to be honest. And again, the prologue, and I didn't talk about the epilogue, but the prologue and the epilogue were actually kind of cool. Like when I saw the prologue, I thought, oh, this is going to be really good. Like I'm in for some good cheesy 80s horror, and you are to an extent, but again, I'm not a big fan of Spielberg when he does those kind of like those feel-good kind of family type things. Like I do like E.T., don't get me wrong, but I prefer more like Raiders of the Lost Ark or things like along those lines, more the something that's got a bit of a oomph to it, you know. And then this again, the kick of the can. But anyway, now I'm kicking the can. So yeah, so just quickly, the epilogue is also, it's when John Lithgow gets off the airplane after being terrified by something on the airplane, and they take him to an ambulance. When he gets in the ambulance, it starts driving away, and Dan Aykroyd is the driver of the van in this situation, and then he turns back to Lithgow and he says, "Do you want to see something really scary?" And then, you know, cut. And so those parts were actually quite entertaining. Wish they had done more of that with like the monster creature effects and stuff. But anyway, again, 3.75 out of 5 for me. Not a terrible movie. If you can pick it up cheap or you can stream it somewhere, I would recommend it. It's not a terrible watch, especially if you like the original Twilight Zone. I haven't seen all of those, but the ones I've seen I really adored. So I would recommend it in that sense. So I hope you enjoyed this review of Twilight Zone, the movie from 1983, the Steven Spielberg, John Landis produced film. And if you've seen this movie, leave comments below. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, consider subscribing. Follow me on Instagram at Night Owl Video. And until next time, I will see you at the video store or the thrift store or just out and about somewhere. Or maybe I'll see you in the Twilight Zone. Bye.